It's The World This Week, 7 days, 4 Paris-based correspondents, 1 hour. The World This Week in partnership with The Daily Beast. We say hello to foreign editor, Christopher Dickey. How are you, sir?
I'm glad to be here.
Glad to have you. Glad to welcome back as well James McCauley, Paris correspondent for The Washington Post.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. And Patrick Smith of the Africa Report. What's donning your cover this week?
Well, actually, we've just gone to press with our annual review of what happened in 2016 and preview of what's happening in 2017. So it's a lot of different things. It's Donald Trump, it's Jacob Zuma, it's Buhari, it's Brexit, you name it. It's all there in the shops in 1 week time.
All right. All right, we'll be looking out for it, and we'll be addressing directly, in fact, some of the topics that you mentioned. The World This Week, by the way, where you can join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter, #WorldThisWeek. The blowback against fake news starts here and now around this very table, just to show that we're serious about our mission to inform the public. It's been decided from high above to vet the panel. So here we go. Pop quiz, gentlemen.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
Who is this man? Any takers? Patrick?
His name is Liam Fox.
No, it's not Liam Fox.
He's his double.
He's one of yours.
Yeah.
All right, I'll give you the answer. Here it goes.
Well, we've got a very good ambassador, Kim Darroch, who's the current ambassador there. He's going to be there for years. He used to work with me in European Union days of old. He's very good. He's a brilliant ambassador, and he's going to stay there.
In fairness to Patrick and the rest of the panel, we didn't know who Kim Darroch was either here. That was a reaction to Tuesday's tweet from Trump Tower in New York. Donald Trump saying many people would like to see Nigel Farage represent Great Britain as their ambassador to the United States. He would do a great job, exclamation point. Patrick, what was your reaction when you first saw that?
Well, I thought, what a happy couple they would make. It's perfect. Yeah, it's absolutely perfect. It was a shot across the second shot across Prime Minister May's bows from Trump Towers. The first one was a somewhat informal invitation. Their first phone call when May rang up Trump to congratulate him. He said, "Well, if you happen to be in America sometime, let me know. Keep in touch." Which was regarded as beyond sort of formal protocol a little bit. And so this is telling her who he wants to have as British ambassador in Washington is another breach of protocol. So I think those two are getting off to an interesting relationship. I don't think it's going to be Thatcher and Reagan somehow. It'll be a little frostier than that.
It's going to be a little frostier than that. And yet, because of the fact that there is Brexit, there were many conservatives who thought, oh, Trump, insurgent. We just had this insurgent movement in Britain.
Yeah,
this could be a great building of the special relationship.
Well, Farage was hanging around Trump for a lot of the campaign and talking to his people, giving them tips on how he did it, all the post-truth stuff on the internet and all the rest of it, as if they needed any help in that regard. So I think, I think there are huge parallels there. But the Conservative Party in Britain is very, very divided, and sure, the Trumpistas, the Brexiters, all together on this. But I think the mainstream of the party still are pretty skeptical. But they also know that they have to get on with whoever is in the White House. And if it's Trump, they're going to have to, find some way to cut a deal and stay relevant.
All right, the British government, after hailing a Trump presidency, as Patrick said, reacting quite strongly. A measure even, I guess you could call it disdain felt among ruling Conservatives in Parliament.
Although there is no vacancy, would the Foreign Secretary think that it's extremely generous of Donald Trump to suggest who should be our ambassador in the United States? And in that measure of fraternity, might he suggest that the best person to fill the vacancy for the ambassador to the United Kingdom next year would be Hillary Rodham Clinton? Though I suspect the last thing she'd want to do is be associated with the incoming administration.
Christopher Dickey, let me ask you about this, because Donald Trump weighing in with a tweet. Now, the point is that we don't know who Kim Darroch is, and you might take the attitude, oh, this is breaching protocol, it's rude to do this kind of thing. But you might also say, hey, this is the new direct democracy, and why not weigh in and in an era where everything has to be transparent? Why not just say what you think?
Are you kidding? You know, if you're the president of the United States, why not just say n'importe quoi, right? I mean, just come out with anything you want.
No, because we're seeing all these pieces coming out about how, you know, with WikiLeaks is forcing diplomats to rethink how they do their job. The fact that we know that there is no such thing anymore as confidentiality, and people.
Well, sure there is. Look, what's going to happen with that is people will just get things will be more and more classified. They'll be less and less accessible to WikiLeaks or to other places like that, and there'll be much less communication within government. That's always been a problem with WikiLeaks. The problem with what Trump is doing is that, you know, he's still not sure who he's playing to, what audience he's playing to. Is he playing to all those people who basically were worshiping him when he was wearing the hat, the red hat that said "Make America Great Again," when he was acting like he was at a professional wrestling match? Or is he going to try and be an actual president of the United States, a good president of the United States? I think he's being pulled in that direction. I think that's what we see with some of the discussions about who he may put in certain positions, like whether Romney will be Secretary of State. That's a responsible president. The Nigel Farage thing, he meets Nigel Farage. Farage goes up to his little Versailles in the sky there on Fifth Avenue, and he likes him, and he says, yeah, sure, this would be a great guy. I could get along with him. I don't think it goes any deeper than that.
All right, Nigel Farage, the first foreign politician of any stripe to meet with Donald Trump
I mean,
after
look
the
at
election.
him.
People they love this picture.
They love the picture. And I think I would add, I mean, I agree with your take. I mean, who knows, like what transpired during their meeting or how much it means. But I think it's also worth pointing out that, you know, Nigel Farage is not just a sort of, I mean, it's not just a violation of protocol as we know it. He is the leader of the United Kingdom Independence Party, this the kind of the motor behind the Brexit vote, and you know, Donald Trump is yet again aligning himself in this very public way with a populist fringe. I mean, I'm not even sure if we can call it a fringe anymore. And you know, he's done the same here in France. We have reports that.
How serious is he about aligning with him?
I mean, I think it's too early to tell, and we don't know the full extent. But I think it's the perception also that matters, even if we don't know the full extent of the relationship. I mean, we have Steve Bannon we have a tweet from Marion Maréchal Le Pen saying that she responds yes emphatically to working with Trump via the entreaty of Steve Bannon. And it's the same idea of this kind of global informal network of populist parties and factions kind of working together for what we don't know and how exactly we also don't know. But the fact that there is this kind of network coalescing.
Yeah, but I think they're going to get into trouble very quickly. I mean, for instance, when Steve Bannon raises the question of Marion Maréchal Le Pen working with him, and she says yes. Well,
who, by the way, just to remind our viewers, is the niece.
She's the niece of Marine Le Pen.
Of Marine Le Pen.
And
she's not even the leader of the party, but she's more to the right than Marine.
She's more to the right, and she's younger and prettier. Let me be very clear about this, because we are talking about Steve Bannon. She's younger and prettier, and he comes out and says she's the rising star in the party. He says, I think, you know, we got to have a good relationship with France. We've got to go into France and work with the Le Pen women, is what he said.
Right.
And then he says, and especially Marion Maréchal Le Pen, she's the rising star of the party. Well, wait a minute, what do you think Marine thinks about that?
But it's in a way like, even if we don't know the degree of the relationship or if it means anything at all, the fact that the president-elect of the United States is engaging with these, again, formerly fringe parties, but now sort of increasingly forces to be reckoned with, there's no other way to look at it other than to say that he has considerably legitimized these forces that used to be never entertained as serious, and he
was in Scotland the day the Brexit vote was announced,
kind of
and he said this is a great idea. I mean, you can't get much stronger than that for an endorsement.
Despite the fact that no one in Scotland
voted for it, but that's a
lot of this is Bannon. Bannon wants to build the Breitbart empire. He has his own agenda. It's not necessarily the same as Trump's agenda. And I think, in fact, you will see
All right,
a
what are the
divergence.
tangible signs of that they don't have the
Well, you
same
said it.
agenda?
What are the tangible signs?
Yeah,
Well, first of all,
because-
Bannon is not going to be president. Bannon doesn't want Romney as Secretary of State. If it were up to Bannon, we wouldn't even be talking about that possibility. Bannon isn't interested in bringing in the mainstream Republican Party. Bannon is basically hostile. He came out, basically, Breitbart came out and denounced Trump for saying that he's not going to try and put Hillary Clinton in jail. I'd say that's a divergence.
Let's talk about some of those other nominations because they are important. The South Carolina governor, Nikki Haley, South Carolina state you know well, little experience on the international stage other than she was born in India.
Was she born in India?
And her parents.
Her parents are
Excuse me,
Indian.
her parents are Indian. There's that one. There's also Betsy DeVos, who is
Well, they're very different. Those are very different
and
creatures. Nikki Haley is an up-and-coming politician in South Carolina, a tough place, you would think, for an Indian American to get to the position where she's in. She took some pretty brave stands for a South Carolina politician after that terrible massacre at the Mother Emanuel Church in Charleston, when there was all the debate about taking down the Confederate flag, the battle flag. She said, let's take it down. Enough of this, she said, let's take it down. And she was right, and it was a very good decision. So she has a lot of credit on that side of things. DeVos comes from the super moneyed part of the Republican Party that has been funding what used to be called the New Right for a long time. The Koch brothers are very close to the DeVos's. She was basically been building that, what we now see is kind of the mainstream of the party, but she's been representative of a hell of a lot of money. Also, it's maybe worth noting that her brother is the founder of Blackwater.
All right, if you did the math correctly at the start of the show, we said 4 Paris-based correspondents, and Sylvain Chassani joins us now. Thanks for being with us. Paris traffic could not keep you away.
I'm sorry. Big apologies.
All right, thanks for being with us, Financial Times Bureau Chief. We're talking about the issue of the cabinet appointments. Something important there that Christopher Dickey mentioned, money. He said, I'm going to do away with the lobbyists. We're seeing a lot of millionaires and billionaires being touted for big jobs.
Indeed. And you know, I think, like Christopher said, you know, we don't, what we're seeing is sort of a kind of amazing array of different strands of the Republican Party and ideology represented, and it remains to be seen which of these will prevail. You know, also the Attorney General, I think, is quite an arresting appointment. I mean, this is somebody
Literally.
who, yeah, seriously. I mean, this is somebody who, during the Reagan era, could not be confirmed in a GOP-controlled Senate
he'd made
judiciary.
racist statements in
exactly.
court.
But in 2016, that somehow is not a disqualifier. So that's another part of the puzzle as well that I think is quite spectacular.
All right, Donald Trump, who
behold.
this week met with reporters from the major networks to most notably complain that his profile photo on the news gave him a double chin. He ditched not only press conferences so far, but the networks altogether with a policy address broadcast over YouTube. Again, we were talking earlier, Sylvain, about a direct democracy approach to handling the job. What do you make of that? The fact that Trump's first statement comes out over YouTube.
Yeah, it's a new era, right? I guess he has had a really difficult relationship with the media, and he still has a very difficult relationship. I mean, the main news anchors got a spanking in the Trump Tower. They had no idea why they were summoned to the Trump Tower, which is amazing. So it's quite puzzling. We just don't know how he's going to. And I guess the New York Times had a really good reaction actually after that, by saying, "Well, no, we're not accepting the rules of the off the record rules. We'll only have an interview with you on the record." And he ultimately caved in. So I guess you just have to hold your position, otherwise it's a bit crazy.
There's hope yet for the mainstream media, Patrick Smith?
Well, I guess that's a different issue. I think under Trump, probably not. I mean, his whole game plan, he does a YouTube video for Thanksgiving Day. He's just jumping over the mainstream media all the time. I think the New York Times thing was a little bit of fun for him. Yeah, he did have to cave in the end. But I see somebody who's loathes the media. I mean, probably as far as American presidents go, there hasn't been a president like this since Nixon in terms of, his paranoia towards the media and loathing of it. The difference is he's got his own sort of private media company, Breitbart, which is effectively doing his job for him. So he's got a kind of alternative.
Well, he has a lot more alternatives than Nixon had. I mean, it's not just Breitbart. I mean, he's got YouTube. I mean, he goes on YouTube and people cover him. And God knows, the mainstream media, all the media covered him for free, endlessly. All he has to do is tweet something outrageous and everybody jumps on it and everybody talks about it. He was able to make the media, including the mainstream media, dance to his tune in terms of the pace of coverage, not the content. But in terms of the pace of coverage, he was able to make the mainstream media dance to his tune every day for the last many months until he was elected president, and it'll continue even more so now.
And I think also, I mean, it's true exactly everything that you're saying about these kind of alternate means of self-produced media that he uses to burnish his own reputation. But I think also what he has shown time and time again is this profound narcissism and sort of desire for approval.
Bit thin-skinned, right? At one
Extremely.
point, he gets into a Twitter war with a TV satire show, Saturday Night Live, because over a sketch.
Or the Hamilton incident, the musical in New York City that kind of gave a speech to his vice president-elect. The point is, I think for him to be satisfied with his own sort of approval, he will need some kind of tacit support from mainstream media organizations eventually. And if you look at what he said sort of in his New York Times interview, the way that he expressed his evaluation of the way that the New York Times, Washington Post, other papers covered him, he said things like, well, sometimes you guys gave me a good article. So he's clearly reading these things and appreciating when the coverage is a little less kind of direct and hard-hitting. So I think that he hasn't, I mean, he criticizes the media all the time, and yet he would be devastated if they abandoned him altogether.
Just one final
point.
point.
Not likely, since he's president of the United States.
One final point on this. You read the New York Times article and you're still scratching your head over what he really stands for, since he seems to roll back on a lot of those issues.
Look, he's not an ideologue. If we want to look at some positive things, he's not an ideologue. He's an instinctive player. And what he led was not a party. He led a movement of people who were reacting to parties and against parties. I mean, he used to be a Democrat, for God's sake. He's not an ideologue like, say, Ted Cruz was an ideologue. He is going to continue to shift, continue to do what he thinks he needs to do to get the kind of approval that he wants. And I think there's some hope in the idea that he wants to be remembered as a good president. Everybody thinks he's just cynical and crazy. I don't think he's crazy. I do think he's a little bit cynical, but not as cynical as that. And I think he wants to be as good a president as he can be of all the American people. And that is what he's trying to do. Now, whether the Republican Party will let him do that, whether the Steve Bannons will let him do that, I don't know.
All right, when we come back, we're going to see how politics in this year of insurgents is playing out here in France. Stay with us. You're watching The World This Week.